And in the season finale, great news, Marina didn't die, although she's pretty convinced her baby did. She's on the mend and Penelope's looking after her a little bit, and Marina apologizes for everything that went down, saying that Penelope was right. Colin's a good guy. He didn't deserve that. They then hear a horse outside and figure that it might be a suitor, but when they go to the window and Marina looks out of it, she looks like she's seen a ghost. And no, it's not George, but it's George's brother. In order, though, to have a proper one-on-one, they have to wait for Portia, who is out running some errands. Now, over with the Duke and the Duchess, now that Daphne and the Duke know that they're not going to be having a child, they've decided to split up. But they're holding off on the announcement until after the season, which is only in a few days. So in the meantime, they have to get the 1800th century of a portrait mode done, an actual portrait, which is being done by Granville, who's having a tough time because it seems like they can't stand each other as they're standing there. And he expresses this so they look longingly into each other's eyes, and you can tell that there's still an attraction there. And even Granville can see it. And while the Duke and Daphne are getting their portrait painted, the rest of the Bridgerton household is kind of just sitting around hanging out, with Eloise grilling Benedict on how he knows the modiste, what she's into, where she hangs out. He thinks it's all because she's a tradesperson, when in reality it's just because Eloise thinks that she's Whistledown. Violet does walk in the room because she's gotten word that their cousin is showing up later that day, which excites pretty much everybody. Before the cousin shows up, though, Violet goes and meets with Daphne as they walk the market, and that's when Daphne tells Violet that her and the Duke are going their separate ways. Violet thinks it's a huge mistake, saying it can't be that bad. You can probably work this out, but Daphne tells her as soon as he decided he'd rather betray me than the grudge that he made to his dead father, then that was pretty much it. They then get interrupted, though, by Portia, who walks up and starts saying how unfortunate it is because they don't have an invite to the ball that night, and the ball is being held by the Duke and the Duchess. And Violet does not want to help her out at all, but Daphne says, don't worry about it, your daughters will be extended an invitation. Portia's lady maid then walks up to her and tells her that a carriage has arrived at the house with a Mr. Crane in it, and that piques the interest of Daphne, thinking that it's George. So everybody heads to the Featherington household, but they find out that it's not actually George, it's his brother. And he tells the group that there's a reason Marina hasn't heard from George in a while. It's because, unfortunately, George passed away on the battlefield. Marina walks out of the room, and Daphne goes chasing after her, where Marina tells Daphne that George is in the process of actually writing her back. George's brother, Philip, found the letter in his belongings where he was promising Marina that they two could run away together. He was in love with her. And she's very appreciative of Daphne because if it wasn't for Daphne, Philip never would have known that Marina was there. And she never would have known how George truly felt about her. Marina then walks off to be with herself, and Daphne heads back to Hastings, where she runs into the Duke, and the Duke is heading off to Will's boxing match that day. A boxing match he has decided to throw for a fat payday. And the Duke asks Daphne if she's coming with, but she says no because she has to prepare for the ball that night. Right before he walks out, though, Daphne says, what did your father do to make you take that vow? But Simon just isn't ready to have that conversation with her, saying it's best if she just doesn't know. Simon then heads off to the boxing match where Will is acting pretty weird. When his wife brings up that they could take this boxing thing around the country, he says, no, we have to prepare for our future. I can't do this forever. He's also got Lord Featherington walking around the ring staring him down. Lord Featherington walks up to these two guys that are in a gang to place a sizable wager on the guy that Will is fighting. And they know that something's up because the only reason a lord would ever bet with them is if his word just isn't good anywhere else. But Featherington, to make sure that they take the bet, offers up the deed to his house. Now it's on Will to come through. The fight starts going on, and Anthony is in attendance, but he's not focused on the fight because also in attendance is Sienna and her new man. Although they're making eyes at each other and they both kind of go to the bathroom, aka bang one out under the bleachers. So there's still fireworks there. Back in the ring, however, Will is putting on a clinic with this guy. He's beating the crap out of him. It's putting a fear of God into Featherington, but he does end up doing his job, taking a fall, and it's something that even the Duke notices isn't kosher. Featherington doesn't care. He's just elated that he won his bet, although the guys he made the bet with definitely think that something fishy went down. After the fight, the Duke goes into the locker room where Will is and starts to dress him down about taking a dive, mentioning honor and all of that, but Will says, hold on, what's more honorable than taking care of one's family? He figures that all of this coming from the Duke has nothing really to do with the fight. It has more to do with what the Duke is dealing with in his own marriage, so he tells him, look man, you're not mad at me. Take that someplace else, and kicks the Duke out. But while the Duke was at the fight, Daphne was hell-bent on finding out exactly what happened between the Duke and his father. And after snooping around a couple of drawers, she finds the letter that the Duke wrote to his dad when he was a little kid. The same letters that his dad never opened, never read. And as she's reading them, Lady Danbury comes in the room, and they start having a conversation about the relationship between the Duke and his dad and how awful it was. The stuttering problem, the perfectionist that his dad wanted him to be, how Lady Danbury really helped him out in all ways. It's really eye-opening to Daphne, who says that Simon can't be more different than that. This conversation with Danbury really changes Daphne's mood around the Duke. The next morning, the two have breakfast together, which hasn't been a real trend, and she tells the Duke that she's going back to her family home because her cousin's showing up, and she does want him to come with because it might be weird if he doesn't. So after breakfast, they head over and they start conversing with the Bridgerton family. Over in the corner, though, Benedict is yelling at Eloise because Eloise went to go pay the modiste a visit where she didn't come right out and say, "You're Lady Whistledown." She just hinted around it, saying things like, "Well, I really hope Lady Whistledown makes retractions. It would be a shame if Lady Whistledown ruined the name of my friend." But as Benedict is having this conversation with Eloise, Antony comes over and says, "What are you guys talking about?" And Benedict comes out and says, "I'm having a relationship with the modiste." And he expects Antony to be completely against it, but Antony, who has his own thing going on with Sienna, says, "No, I'm happy for you." Penelope even shows up for this party, although when she walks in, Colin's singing and, man, she's swooning. But Eloise pulls her aside and tells her that she's figured out who Whistledown is. It's Madame Delacroix, the modiste. But at this little party, the Duke absolutely shines with the little kids. I mean, he's a natural. After the party, Penelope heads back to the Featherington household where they've had quite a day because Philip came back and actually proposed to Marina, saying that that's what George would have wanted, him to take care of Marina and her child. But Marina said no. She didn't know Philip. She wasn't in love with Philip. She had no interest in marrying Philip. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that she was convinced that she had terminated the child. So she just headed up to her room. Portia Featherington let Marina be, and she took some of the winnings from Lord Featherington and paid off the debt at the modiste. This allowed the Featherington girls to get brand new dresses. Unfortunately for Penelope, she's still stuck in hideous yellow. As the girls are trying on dresses, they hear a plate outside crash, and that's because Marina was getting some food and she felt something in her stomach, and she immediately knows that she needs to talk to a doctor. They call a doctor in, and the doctor lets her know, yeah, that whole herbal tea trying to terminate a baby thing, shockingly, that didn't work. You're still pregnant. So Marina's going to have to call up Philip again and see if he wants to get married, because she needs some reassurances. Now, most of the town that night is getting ready for the final ball of the season, which is being held by the Duke and the Duchess. And right before the ball, they're admiring their painting, and they start discussing how they want to play this whole thing, how many dances they want to do together. They don't want to make it too obvious that they're splitting up after this. Even through the conversation, though, you can tell that they still have feelings for each other, and Daphne tells the Duke that he was wonderful with the children. He tells her that children always have adored him, but that doesn't mean he wants any of his own. So the two prepare for one last dance. The ball kicks off, and Antony headed to pick up his date for the night, Sienna. They were hanging out earlier, and they talked about making the relationship public. He was to pick her up that night and take her to the ball as his date. But when he went to pick her up, she was still with that other guy. He's dressed like Tom Cruise in Risky Business. Porky Pig in it. All shirt, no pants. It was awkward. And Sienna tells Antony that all that talk that they had was great, but in reality, she wants to be with somebody who's not going to make her change. And that's this rando with the mustache and great hair. So she breaks things off with Antony. Eloise shows up with Violet all dolled up, but she's extremely uncomfortable. She's still on the hunt, though, for Whistledown. The Featheringtons show up, Benedict and Colin show up, and when Colin sees Penelope, he goes over to talk to her and apologizes to her for everything that happened with Marina, saying that Penelope was right. Penelope, though, can't keep her feelings to herself anymore. She knows she needs to tell Colin how she feels. But right before she does, he says, well, I have something to tell you too. I'm leaving first thing tomorrow morning. I'm going to start my tour in the Mediterranean, and you actually helped me remember how much I wanted to travel. This puts a kibosh on Penelope telling Colin how she feels. And she starts to rush out of the ball, but Eloise stops her and tells her, look, the Queen's here. I'm going to tell her about Whistledown. But at that point, Penelope doesn't care. She just wants to go home. The poor girl is in a hideous yellow dress, and she's heartbroken. So Eloise walks up to tell the Queen her latest theory, but the Queen's minion stops her, saying nobody just walks up to the Queen. So Eloise starts to smooth talk him a little bit, complimenting him, telling him that it was probably his idea to try to track down Whistledown, which he admits, yeah, it was. And through this conversation, he says that they figured out a printing press that Whistledown gets her pamphlets printed at. And they also know that she drops it off on nights like this, where the entire town is at a ball. So they're actually waiting her out as we speak. And that puts the fear of God into Eloise because she wants to get to Whistledown before the queen does. And she knows at this point she's on borrowed time. So she pays a carriage driver to ride off to the printing press and try to intercept Whistledown. And she does that. Whistledown's carriage shows up, but so do the queen's men. And she yells to Whistledown's carriage that it's a trap. Whistledown is able to get away, and her identity is still a secret. It's all because of Eloise. Back at the ball, however, Danbury walks up to the Duke and says, I'm assuming that your plans to separate from Daphne haven't changed? And he says, no, they haven't. She tells him that pride is going to cost him everything and leave him with nothing. He shouldn't allow it to happen to him like it did to his father. Violet is also trying to do her best to keep the Duke and Duchess together by having a conversation with Daphne about love. And about how the relationship between Violet and her husband wasn't always easy, but they chose to love one another. They didn't just give up. They then have the moment of their last dance, and as they're waltzing around the dance floor, it starts to rain. And everybody gets off except the Duke and the Duchess. At one point, Philippa and her guy try to go back on, but Danbury, being that bad bitch, stops them. Because the Featheringtons aren't going to ruin this moment. Danbury announces to everybody that this party is over. And in the rain, Daphne tells the Duke that she's aware of why the Duke made that vow to his father. And just because somebody isn't perfect doesn't make them any less worthy of love. She tells him, I'm tired of pretending and acting like I don't love you. I love you. I love all of you. Even the parts that you believe are too dark and shameful, I love. You might believe that you're too damaged to ever be happy, but you can choose differently. And then she leaves. They meet back up at Hastings and he tells her, I don't want to be alone, and I know that now. And they agree to stay together. They then have sex where the Duke does not pull out. So that's one happy ending to the night. Unfortunately, over in the Featheringtons, when they get home from the ball, they have terrible news as Lord Featherington has been killed. He went to a brothel that night to celebrate his winnings, but the guys that he screwed over were waiting for him, and they killed him. And they took his money. It's left Portia Featherington not knowing what she's going to do. When Eloise finds out, she heads over to comfort Penelope. They then get into a conversation about what happened between Eloise and Whistledown, and Eloise lets her know that she was able to save Whistledown, and she's pretty positive that next season, Whistledown will right what she did wrong with the Featheringtons. Colin is not the only one that's leaving, though. Marina is also leaving. She was able to get in touch with Philip, and Philip agreed to marry her. She has a conversation with Portia about how she did it, how she was in a relationship so long with someone that she didn't love. And Portia lets her know that it isn't easy, but you learn to love things. You learn to love your children, the house, and she knows that Marina will be good with it because Marina is strong. So Marina gets in a carriage with a guy she barely knows and heads off. And as the Featherington girls are watching the carriage go by, the lady's maid runs up to Portia because they've located the guy that's going to inherit the Featherington estate. And by the looks of it, Portia doesn't seem thrilled. Over at the Bridgertons, they say goodbye to Colin, and the Duke, Duchess, and Antony are having a conversation where the Duke tells Antony that they've decided to stay in London for a little bit. Antony has also made a pretty big decision in his life to find a Viscountess. Antony is on the market. He's looking for a wife. He doesn't even care about love at this point. He's given up on that. And at this point, Eloise has made it back to the Bridgerton household because it's right across the street. And she's talking to Benedict about the Modiste. And it turns out the Modiste is heading back to France. And Eloise says, are you going to say goodbye to her? And Benedict says, well, I did last night. I was with her. And that means the Modiste is not Lady Whistledown. Now, fast forward a couple months later. Surprise! It's a boy! Daphne and the Duke welcome their first child into the world together. They don't have names picked out, but they know that it will be an A because that is the Bridgerton tradition. Oh, and then finally, we do find out who Whistledown is. It was Penelope the whole time. Thank you so much for watching this recap. I really appreciate it. I actually like this show a lot more than I thought I would. I thought I was going to hate watch it, but no, I was all into it. Look, give me a thumbs up if you like the video, thumbs down if you don't. Please be nice in the comment section. You don't have to nitpick every little detail I got wrong. It's going to happen. This recap's like 15 hours long. But make sure to share it if you know somebody that needs a Bridgerton recap. Consider subscribing to the channel, and thank you once again for watching.